Dacia was created by the Romanian government in 1966. It had no plans to develop its own vehicles and had soon struck a deal with Renault to build Renault cars under licence in Romania. The first model was the 1100, a rebadged Renault 8 that managed to sell 37,500 cars between 1968 and 1972. In 1969, Dacia revealed the 1300 range. Based on the Renault 12, it was praised for its practicality and reliability, and soon had a waiting list of Romanians who wanted to buy one. In 1979, the facelifted 1300 was renamed the 1310, of which there were 6 generations, 7 in total if you include the original Dacia 1300. The 1300 range spawned the Dacia pickup, a model that stayed in production until 2006, giving the Renault-sourced model a 37-year production run. In total, over 2.5 million 1300s were built, and production only stopped when Romania joined the EU, as the 1300 failed to meet the EU emission regulations. One of the reasons that the 1300 had such a long production run was that Renault and the Romanian government had only signed a 10-year deal, and when it finished in September 1976, no new agreement was signed, leaving Dacia only the tools to build the 1300's body and the rights to some of the 4-cylinder petrols. In 1988, Dacia launched its first non-Renault developed vehicle, the 500 Laston. A city car powered by a 500cc 2-cylinder engine, it was cheap to buy and run, but only produced 22 horsepower, meaning it was too slow for anything other than city use. It also gained a reputation for poor build quality and reliability. In 1991, the Laston ceased production, having only sold 6,500 models. In 1995, Dacia launched the Nova, their first in-house developed model. The development process had taken 12 years to complete, meaning the Nova was already dated on its release. And while the Nova was good to drive, with some decently performing Renault engines, the car was both smaller and more expensive than the existing 1300 models of the time, leaving the Nova a hard sell for Dacia, who had a much easier time selling the 1300, despite it being on sale for 26 years by that time. In 1999, Renault buys 51% of Dacia for the equivalent of $50 million, under the agreement that Renault would also invest a further $200 million into the Romanian factories that build the cars, to give them and the Romanian workers a secure future. The first Dacia launched under Renault control was the Supernova of 2000, essentially a facelifted Nova, but with a much more modern 1.4 engine that had been sourced from the Renault Clio. In 2003, Dacia launched the Salenza. It was the last model released using a Dacia chassis. It was a follow-on model from the Nova and Supernova. It was the first time that the model had a diesel option. However, it was only a stopgap car, as the Renault-developed models were in the pipeline. In 2004, Dacia launched the Logan, the first Renault-developed model that had been planned as a Dacia from the offset. It was one of Europe's cheapest cars, despite being a mid-sized 5-seater, with a bigger boot than most C-segment hatchbacks. In 2006, Dacia launched the Logan MCV. This was Europe's cheapest 7-seater by a big margin. Later on, Dacia launched both a van and a pickup variant of the Logan. 2007 saw the launch of the Sandero, a small hatchback that shared parts with the Clio and sat below the Logan in the model's lineup. It debuted in Brazil, making it the first ever Renault Group car to debut outside of Europe. Like the Logan, the Sandero came with a range of modern, economical 4-cylinder petrols and diesels that were sourced from Renault, while retaining very low purchase prices. In 2010, Dacia launched the Duster, a mid-size SUV based on the Sandero platform. It was available with 4-wheel drive, and later on, some markets had the option of the Dacia Duster pickup. In 2017, the Duster received a heavy facelift. With softer, more modern styling, the Duster soon became one of the best-selling SUVs in many European and South American markets. In 2012, Dacia launched the second-generation Sandero. This was the first generation available in right-hand drive, and when it went on sale in the UK, it was priced from under £6,000. And while the base spec didn't have much kit, it did have 5 seats and a large 320-litre boot. With a 4-cylinder 75 horsepower 1.2-litre engine, it was perfectly capable on the motorway. The cheapest car prior to this had been the Suzuki Alto-based Nissan Pixo that cost £1,000 more, only had 4 seats, and the boot was much smaller at 129 litres. To find a competitor to the new Sandero, you need to look on the second-hand market. 2012 also sees the release of the Mark II Logan. This time around, it's essentially a saloon version of the Sandero. It's not available in right-hand drive markets. However, the following year, an estate version called the Logan MCV hits the market, and due to its increased space and versatility, was offered in left-hand drive and right-hand drive markets. In 2012, Dacia launches 2 multi-people vehicles, both sharing the same stretched Sandero chassis. The first, the Dacia Logi, is a 5 or 7-seater similar in size to a Peugeot 5008. The second is the Docker, a slightly smaller 5-seater, similar in dimensions to the Renault Kangoo. It was also available as a van and a pickup. Despite being smaller than the Logi, its square van-like shape meant that with all the rear seats folded, the Docker has the biggest boot. By 2014, Dacia was selling over 500,000 cars a year, and by 2018, Dacia was over 8% of Romania's total export. In 2020, Dacia launches the new Sandero, this time with a simplified engine range, which features a 1 litre, a 1 litre turbo, and a 1 litre turbo that's been developed to use both petrol and LPG gas. This reduces factory complications and reduces production costs. Unlike previous Dacias that had sat on previous generation Renault parts, the newer Sandero sits on the Renault CMF-B chassis, itself had only been introduced on the 2019 Clio. At the same time, Dacia also launched the third generation Logan. This time it's only available as a saloon, and despite its sportier fastback shape, the Logan is still one of Europe's cheapest models. 2020 sees Dacia launch the Spring in Europe. It's both their first electric model and their first city car. It's based on the Renault Kwid, a car that from 2015 has been sold in Asia and South America with both 800cc and 1 litre 3-cylinder engines. 2020 saw Renault sign a deal with China's Dongfeng to develop an electric version of the Kwid. Dongfeng also sells its own version called the Nanobox. The Spring and Nanobox only get electric power, while the Renault comes available with both petrol or electric versions. The Spring is by far Europe's cheapest electric car, costing roughly £15,000. Power comes from either a 45 or 65 horsepower electric motor, and it's good for over 130 miles of electric range. 2021 sees Dacia launch the Jogger, a 7-seat MPV with SUV styling. It replaces the Logan MCV, Docker and Logi. It's powered by the same 1 litre turbo as the Sandero. It also comes available with a 1.6 litre hybrid from the Clio. The hybrid setup produces 140 horsepower and it's good for over 60 miles to the gallon. It's Dacia's first right-hand drive multi-people vehicle, and it's also Europe's cheapest 7-seater. 2024 sees the launch of the third generation Duster. It's got a striking new design, and it's available with a turbo petrol, a mild hybrid turbo petrol, a full hybrid, or an LPG variant. Despite being available with a strong range of engines, with both automatic and four-wheel drive options, the Duster remains one of Europe's cheapest SUVs.